there's one last Russian artillery storage base that I want to cover that really cannot be ignored. While Juche is the largest towed base and Omsk self-propelled, the 80th Arsenal has a huge share of both. These three bases alone hold about 75% of all Russian stored artillery, while the remaining 25% is spread across almost 24 others. But unlike the other two, the 80th has always been absolutely packed full of artillery and their support vehicles squeezed closely together. The numbers here are enough to fully equip many entire divisions worth of artillery. And being just 1,000 miles from Ukraine, within the range of known Ukrainian drones, is there anything Ukraine could do to the base where Russia seems to be packing a huge percentage of its assets? And keeping track of your assets fits perfectly with our sponsor, Incogni. Your personal data is out there, and it's not safe. Data brokers collect everything, your name, address, even social security number, and sell it all to the highest bidder. And people search websites make it worse, publishing your details online for anyone to find, from curious strangers to dangerous scammers. I've talked about it before. I searched my name and found a site listing my home address, phone number, and even job history. It's pretty terrifying. You might have experienced the same, and if not, it's only getting easier and more sophisticated with AI these days. And Incogni is the solution. It automatically contacts data brokers, demanding they delete your data, and handles all their objections. One subscription ensures that your data stays gone with ongoing cleanups and repeated takedown requests. So don't let your data be a free-for-all. Sign up for Incogni now and reclaim your privacy before it's too late. Use my code, Cabal, or the link in the description and get 60% off an annual plan. Again, Incogni. There isn't much I could find on the history of the base, likely because its name and purpose has changed over the decades. A declassified US spy satellite image from 1978 does show that there was a base here. At first glance, it's tempting to think that these are towed artillery, but comparing it to recent imagery just shows there were support columns for new buildings being constructed. In the far northeast section, though, it does appear these objects look like towed artillery, with the other vehicles likely being support trucks. The base likely wasn't a storage base at the time, and only became one in the 90s with the CFE treaty that forced the Soviets, and later Russia, to move a vast amount of equipment east of the Ural Mountains, where this base is located. The base has declined in numbers pretty steadily between the start of the war and mid-2024, especially in towed artillery, going from over 2,000 to just over 1,000. But in the years since, things have changed. The number of towed artillery really hasn't changed at all over the last year, from 1,106 in June 2024 to 1,138 in May 2025, so actually a slight increase. But due to the lower resolution image we had last year, it becomes extremely difficult to count these things. I mean, just look at this. Then our new image, despite being higher resolution, it's still so easy to get lost and they're still tricky. So the less than 3% increase is well within the margin of error, and it's safe to say that it's stayed the same. One interesting note is the over 400 M30s lining the front of the base here. That alone is enough to fully equip multiple divisions. However, the M30 is an extremely old piece of artillery. It first entered service way back in 1939, all the way at the beginning of World War II. And while we do know Russia has used the M30 in the war in Ukraine, these haven't really moved much. Back in 2021, they also lined the area with many more out past the main gate, which is now no longer used. As for self-propelled artillery, again, the figures are roughly the same, with 629 a year ago to 623 today, again within the margin of error. They have moved around a lot though, which brings up a theory that Jompy and a few others have brought up, and that is that this base here may be being used to consolidate as Russia's stockpiles decline. We've seen similar things at tank storage bases, where certain bases decline quickly while others not so much. And it makes sense. As Russia has less and less vehicles in storage, they don't need as many storage bases. You might as well move them all to a few different bases and shut down the others, freeing up labor, more simple logistics, and not duplicating efforts. And the 80th is a perfect candidate for this. Russia's largest self-propelled artillery storage is further east, and this location would be closer to Europe. Also, Juche, which we covered recently, and is by far the largest towed artillery storage base, is less than 200 kilometers away, and there is a rail line directly connecting them. Juche also has very few maintenance and support facilities, especially compared to the 80th Arsenal here. And in general, this base is closer to Ukraine and Europe, where they would predict these artillery would most likely be needed. But at the same time, not too close to Ukraine, still some 1,600 kilometers away. That way, it wouldn't become some easy target for more powerful long-range weapons that could do real damage. And speaking of that, this site being full of tightly packed artillery makes it a tempting target. And we know Ukraine has successfully carried out attacks of targets even further away. But the vehicles here make much more difficult targets than oil tanks or thin-skinned and delicate bombers. These are all heavy metal, with armor designed for frontline combat. FPV drones, or even any other larger drone packed with just a few dozen kilograms of explosives, really wouldn't do much damage to more than 1 or 2 vehicles at best. So you would end up needing closer to 1,000 of them, which is completely unrealistic. You would need missiles with giant warheads closer to 1 ton, and with a range of nearly 2,000 kilometers to do any real damage, which Ukraine doesn't have. In fact, neither Europe or the US really have any conventional weapons that they could give to Ukraine that could do that, short of giving them strategic bombers to fly through densely defended Russian airspace. Really, only the Chinese have something like this, with missiles like the DF-26. They've had the need for such weapons in gaining the ability to strike US bases in the Pacific, like Guam, with conventional warheads. So maybe Ukraine can ask China. But until then, this base is pretty safe, making it no surprise that it's so full.